Hello, history friends. This is the Chapter 18 to 20 test. Question number 1 says, at Promontory Point, Utah, where the Central Pacific and Union Pacific Railroads met on May 10, 1869, a golden spike marked the linking of the nation by establishing the first blank transcontinental railroad, canal system, or interstate highway system. Number 2, canals were the popular mode of transportation until the emergence of automobiles, railroads, airplanes. The blank was land between the Missouri River and the Rocky Mountains. Is that the Mississippi River, the Great Plains, or St. Louis? Texans found longhorn blank running wild. They used them for beef, hides, and other goods. They found buffalo, they found swine, or they found cattle. Number 5, American Indians relied on the blank as a source of food, and between 1865 and 1875, millions had been killed by the U.S. Army and farmers. Is that longhorn cattle, buffalo, or Mississippi River? Number 6, settlers and the U.S. government thought that the American Indians were in the path of blank and needed to be moved. In the path of progress, path of failure, or the path of the new highways being built. Number 7, blank was discovered in the Black Hills, which forced the Sioux Indians onto reservations. Gold was discovered, silver was discovered, or oil was discovered. Number 8, why did the policy of treating the Great Plains as a huge reservation change? White settlers started wanting lands on the plains, Native American population decreased and needed less land, or the plains failed to meet the needs of Native Americans. Number 9, many immigrants flocked to the nation's cities because of quality schools, steady jobs, convenient shopping. Andrew Carnegie became very wealthy for his work in the oil industry, steel industry, or farming industry. After the discovery of black gold, Edwin Drake used a pipe, and from 69 feet into the earth, the first blank in America was created. The first oil well, first windmill, or first tractor. Number 12, identify the person who created trusts and was criticized as a robber baron while serving as the head of the Standard Oil Company. George M. Pullman, John D. Rockefeller, Thomas Alva Edison. Number 13, identify the definition of monopoly. A cheap and effective manufacturing process for making steel, complete control of an industry's production, quality, wages paid, and prices charged, or an agreement to limit emigration of skilled workers to the U.S. Number 14, in the jungle, Upton Sinclair exposed dangers faced by coal miners, corrupt business practices of the Standard Oil Company, unsanitary conditions in the meatpacking industry. The law that required truthful labels was the Pure Food and Drug Act, the Meat Inspection Act, or the Sherman Antitrust Act. Number 16, the legislation put forth strict cleanliness requirements for meat packers and created the program of federal meat inspection still used today. The Sherman Antitrust Act, the Pure Food and Drug Act, or the Meat Inspection Act. Number 17, identify the person who perfected the incandescent light bulb, created an electrical power system, and organized power plants. Is that Alexander Graham Bell, George M. Pullman, or Thomas Alva Edison? Number 18, new inventions like the elevator, camera, and typesetting all created new blank for Americans. Created new homes, new jobs, new families. Number 19, land and water near factories became polluted, clean, or larger. Number 20, Which statement best describes John Muir's views of national parks? National parks preserve land and protect it from unnecessary development so future generations can enjoy it. National parks take up space that could be used for improving the American economy. Number 21. How would an industrialist view national parks in the late 1800s? National parks preserve land and protect it from unnecessary development so future generations can enjoy it. Or national parks take up space that could be for improving the American economy. 22. During this time period, there were not laws to protect blank and keep them from working in dangerous conditions. There were no laws there to protect business owners, to protect workers like immigrants, children, men and women, or suppliers. 23. Many immigrants faced problems and blank. They were not treated fairly, and they were given jobs that many Americans would not have taken. Desegregation, disenfranchisement, or discrimination. An immigrant who went through Ellis Island was least likely to have come from Asia, Eastern Europe, Western Europe. 25. Through which place did immigrants arriving on the West Coast pass before gaining entry into the U.S.? Angel Island, Ellis Island, Coney Island. Number 26. Blank were developed in cities and could move people quickly and inexpensively using a track that spread throughout the city. Horse and buggies, electric streetcars, motor vehicles. Cities became centers for the blank and offered museums, plays, and sports. Centers for the sciences, centers for the arts, centers for the humanities. 28. An overcrowded and unsanitary apartment building in the city was known as a slum, a settlement house, or a tenement house. Number 29. Which of the following was not a problem for those living in urban areas in the late 1800s? An increase in crime, a spread of fires, or a lack of ethnic communities for immigrants arriving in the U.S.? All right, the next portion of the test, part 2, is a document-based reading, and this is called the laws. So our answers to these questions are going to come from the passage. It says, in the late 1800s, thousands immigrated to America from Europe and Asia. Chinese-American writer Maxine Hong Kingston has examined immigrants' rights to belong in this book. The rights to belong in America. In her book, Chinamen, Kingston included laws against Chinese immigrants. This is what her book says. The United States and China recognize the right of man to change his home and allegiance, and the advantage of free immigration of their citizens from one country to the other. Article 5 of the Burlingame Treaty signed in Washington, D.C., July 28, 1868. 1868, the year 40,000 miners of Chinese ancestry were driven out. The 14th Amendment, adopted in that same year, said that naturalized Americans have the same rights as native-born Americans. But in 1870, the Nationality Act specified that only free white and African aliens were allowed to apply for naturalization, and Chinese were not white. In 1878, California prohibited or stopped Chinese from entering. New state laws empowered cities to confine them or to throw them out. Ship owners were to be fined for transporting them. The Chinese were barred from attending public schools. The only California fishermen forced to pay fishing and shellfish taxes were the Chinese, and they were prohibited from owning real estate. They could not apply for business licenses. Employers could be fined for hiring them. No Chinese could be hired by governments. No Chinese could testify in court, either for or against a white man. Federal courts declared some of the state and city laws unconstitutional, but the laws were then reenacted in another form. In 1880, the Burlingame Treaty was modified. The immigration of Chinese laborers to the United States would be reasonably limited. In return, the American government promised to protect the Chinese from lynchings. In 1881, the Burlingame Treaty was suspended for 20 years. In protest, China ordered scholars studying in the United States to return home. So let's look at our questions. Question number 30. What did the Nationality Act of 1870 say? Feel free to pause, type up your answer, and then come back. 31. How did the U.S. government offer to protect the Chinese? 32. The Burlingame Treaty was suspended for 20 years. How did the Chinese respond? 33. How or in what ways did the United States never really abide by the original Burlingame Treaty? And then 34. Which do you think was the most unreasonable law or event in the passage, and why? So when you're done, you're going to come on down here and you have two images to choose from. So first you need to identify for question 35, choose one of the photos. Which photo will you be using? Image 1 or image 2? And then for question 36, who are the people in this photo? Are they feeling a certain way? Is there any relationship among them? 37, what are they doing and why? And then 38, where was this taken and when? And then the last part of our test is our essay. You will be choosing between A through M for your essay topic, and you're going to write that for number 39. And then for question 40, you will be writing 5 sentences that answer every part of your question. So A says, explain how pioneers traveled in the West and how the Transcontinental Railroad was built. B, describe what kinds of people lived on the frontier and what life was like for them. C, explain how the westward movement affected the American Indians in the West. And D, describe the help that Congress gave the Indians at the end of the frontier. Under Chapter 19, E says, describe the development of the steel industry. F, describe the development of the petroleum industry and the new ways in which businesses were organized. And then G, list new industries that changed the world. Under Chapter 20, the first option is H, to identify reasons for the growth of cities. I, to describe working conditions in factories. J, to explain the reasons for different immigrant groups coming to the United States. K, to explain how immigrants and African Americans face discrimination. L, to describe some of the developments that made city living interesting. Or M, explain why cities had social problems. So you're going to, for 39, tell me which letter you are writing about, and then 40, 5 sentences for that essay. And then when you're finished, you can hit submit.